We start in a city dominated by constant rain and endless darkness. We meet Bannon, who is trying to start an old car, but the engine fails. Isolated in a desolate scene, he abandons the vehicle and sets off in search of shelter and supplies. As he explores the empty, damp buildings, he finds a seemingly safe house. Inside, the silence is broken by mysterious noises. Bannon climbs the stairs and, while investigating the sound, sees a gigantic figure in the distance, a Nephilim. The presence of the creature is disturbing and surreal, as if something that only exists while being observed. In another window, an old man turns off the light, signaling that it's better not to draw attention. The man continues exploring the house and, in one of the rooms, finds a lifeless body on the floor, the corpse of someone who probably faced the same fate he is trying to avoid. He kneels, removes the gloves from the dead person, and puts them on. Then he finds a weapon, examines it quickly, and puts it in his backpack without hesitation, as if knowing that at some point it will be necessary. After that, he grabs a radio from the backpack and tries to communicate. But before he can speak, he hears a muffled metallic sound coming from some corner of the room. Upon investigating, he discovers another radio turned on, hidden under the bed. When he picks it up, he hears only static, noises, and fragments of voices, but no concrete response. He keeps exploring, and, as he passes through a narrow corridor, sees a number scribbled on the wall, as if someone had purposely left it there. It seems to be a radio frequency. He decides to test and adjust it on the device, dials the frequency, tries to make contact, and speaks, hoping for a response. But silence persists. Bannon enters an old school, apparently abandoned. In what seemed to be an old party room, he finds traces of a forgotten celebration, deflated balloons, fallen banners, and turn-off disco lights. He turns on the lights with the flashlight, trying to simulate a festive atmosphere, but what follows is a disconcerting silence. He smiles briefly, an attempt to find some relief in the chaos, until illuminating a dark corner of the room, he sees a woman standing still. The fright causes him to fall, but when he gets up and searches the place, he finds no one. The feeling of being watched increases, and the tension in the atmosphere grows. He goes up to the second floor and hears a voice on the radio. The tension is palpable, but he quickly responds, asking who is on the other side. The voice, hoarse and muffled, introduces itself as Demian. The man on the radio starts asking questions, suspicious. Bannon, almost out of energy, confirms that he has been alone for days, maybe weeks. The man, now more cautious, reveals that there are dangerous people in the streets, and that he would prefer to avoid contact, but that he was the one who left the frequencies on the walls. He speaks quickly, not giving many details, but mentions that he is hiding in a nearby building. The communication abruptly cuts off, leaving Bannon with more questions than answers. Demian explains that he heard suspicious sounds, screams, and gunshots, and decided to take refuge until everything calmed down. Bannon asks what kind of sounds they were, but Demian responds that he heard screams and gunfire too. The moment Bannon asks for his location, the transmission is cut off abruptly. Alone again, he sits, takes out his phone, and begins to view photos and audios of his wife and daughter. While watching a video of his little girl, he looks to the side and sees a man who seems to be a younger version of himself. Outside, he manages to collect some rainwater. He smells the bottle, trying to decide whether to drink it or not. At that moment, the same man appears, saying that if he is not sure, then he shouldn't drink. As he is about to take the risk, the radio starts playing again. It's Demian calling him, and he says he had to hang up because he heard new sounds, but now he's going to meet Bannon and asks him to stay calm. Bannon says he has a car they could use to escape the city, but the engine isn't working. Demian replies that there are some nearby factories where they might find something useful. While they talk, Bannon hears noises and goes to the window, where he sees a red light. Soon after, he hears someone crying for help. He decides to go out to investigate and finds a macabre statue of a woman surrounded by roses. He tries to pick one of the flowers but hears the cry for help again. He enters a room and starts listening to various strange sounds. Then he pulls out the gun, hears a baby crying, and moves cautiously until he finds a deformed creature, a sort of shapeshifter. He then realizes that it was she, who was imitating the sounds. He tries to shoot, but discovers the gun is unloaded. With no alternative, Bannon starts running while the creature chases him. He hides and watches as she passes closely, screaming with multiple voices at the same time. He covers his ears, trying to endure the disturbing noise. Sometime later, Bannon wakes up in a forest. He walks among the trees until he finds a white wolf staring him in the eyes before continuing on its way. Further ahead, he encounters a bearded old man engaged in a strange ritual with human teeth hanging on objects around. Suddenly, Bannon feels a sharp pain in his mouth and, upon spitting, realizes he has lost a tooth, from which a small creature begins to sprout. He goes into shock until he wakes up in a dark forest, gasping and terrified. He grabs the lantern and lights up the place when he sees a man walking backward. The stranger approaches quickly and only says an enigmatic phrase, asking him to return it. Bannon then wakes up again, revealing that it was all a nightmare. He goes to the same window as before and sees that there are still red lights in the sky. He takes the rainwater bottle and drinks it. He looks for more supplies and even drinks water from the ground. Then he decides it's time to leave that abandoned place. He seeks food and water, finding only a few small fruits on a tree. He arrives at a greenhouse and tries to open a can of food he had found at the beginning when Demian communicates with him again. Bannon asks if Demian is nearby, and Demian replies that he had some unforeseen events and had to change his route. Bannon then tells about the encounter with the creature. Demian warns him not to trust them, as they can perfectly imitate human voices. Bannon mentions he has a gun for protection, but it failed when he tried to use it. Demian asks if there are bullets in the gun, and Bannon replies he doesn't know. Then, Demian gives him a brief explanation of how to use a gun. They continue talking until Bannon hears a terrifying noise. Demian hears it too, and says it's a Nephilim. Soon after, 2 jets fly by and more red lights appear, revealing they are the last military trying to fight against these creatures. Demian comments that he thinks it's all in vain. Bannon for a moment gazes at the photos of his old family until that man reappears and steals his phone. Demian calls again and says it's a good time for him to get out of there. Bannon climbs a tree and tries to reach a wall, but suddenly a shot is fired in his direction, causing him to fall. He runs to a shelter and hides from the attacks. A new explosion hits the area, and the situation becomes frantic, with several bombs being dropped as Bannon runs for his life until he reaches a safe place. There, he finds a man, but immediately hides, following Demian's advice. Bannon decides to follow the man to a narrow place. The man, armed with a knife, refuses to let go, but Bannon insists. After a brief moment of resistance, the man gives in. Bannon demands the backpack, and the man pleads, saying it's all he has, but Bannon shows no mercy. He approaches and tries to grab the backpack, but the man tries to disarm him. Bannon reacts quickly and shoots, hitting the man's foot. He calls him crazy, but Bannon ignores him, taking the backpack and leaving him to die. Upon opening the backpack, Bannon is frustrated to find only rags, but among them he finds some water, exactly what he needed, as he hadn't drunk or eaten for days. Bannon drinks the dirty water, cursing himself, but soon discards it. Then, a new cry for help echoes, but this time, Bannon realizes it is just the creature trying to trick him. He quickly hides and watches as the same creature approaches. It gets dangerously close, but a distant sound of gunfire makes it give up. Seizing the opportunity, Bannon escapes and finds a basement to take refuge. As he walks down the basement corridor, he is startled by a man who holds him at gunpoint. The stranger asks who he is and, with a disturbed look, calls him by the name of his missing son, Isaias. Without saying anything, Bannon accepts the situation and follows the man to his home. The old man offers food and water, and Bannon, without hesitation, devours the food. However, when drinking, he realizes it is urine and immediately spits it out. They talk for a while until the man reveals that his daughter left with the Nephilims and became pregnant by one of them. Bannon asks where she is now, and the man, in a moment of delirium, says he will go look for his daughter. Seizing the distraction, Bannon escapes and heads to the warehouses mentioned by Demian. There, he finds a car battery in good condition. Bannon feels a glimmer of hope and decides to notify Demian. He asks to meet, but Demian replies that he is far away and asks for the location of the car. Bannon hesitates but decides to trust and reveals the location. As he continues on his way, he has a vision of the past, where he sees a little boy playing with a toy car. Before resuming his journey, Bannon encounters the creature once more. He hides and, in a burst of inspiration, has the idea to use the old radio he found earlier to distract it. He then places the radio in a bucket to create an echo and attracts the creature's attention by screaming into the radio. Seeing that the plan worked, he runs. But soon the creature begins to pursue him. He manages to get into the car but ends up dropping the battery. The creature starts fiddling with the vehicle, and Bannon crouches down, fearing for his life. The creature's claws appear on the glass, and he quickly locks the doors while it screams fiercely outside. Bannon is desperate until suddenly the creature is hit by a gunshot. A man appears in front of him. It's Demian, who has come to rescue him. He picks up the battery from the ground and says it has lost too much acid and won't work. Bannon, in tears, collapses on the steering wheel. Demian, impassive, says it's not the time to lament and that it's not safe to stay there. He knows a way to get them out. The two follow a narrow alley until they reach the entrance of a tunnel. Demian suggests they separate to increase their chances of survival. Bannon hesitates but agrees and starts walking through the tunnels, illuminating the path with his flashlight, which soon begins to fail. Terrified, he hears more sounds of creatures. Wandering aimlessly in the dark, he leaves the flashlight behind. He sees the tunnel's exit and, feeling a brief relief at freedom, runs towards a forest. But, as the environment darkens, he sees several lanterns lighting up the woods. He hides and watches the military eliminate the creatures. A soldier passes close to Bannon, who pretends to be dead, and then runs when they are distracted. He stops by a tree to rest and realizes the gunfire has stopped. Then, he hears a scream for help. This time, he decides to investigate and finds Demian, who asks for silence. The next day, they continue their journey through the forest. Demian says they need to hunt something and that the area is good for rabbits. He asks for a moment to go into the bushes to relieve himself, while Bannon finds a puddle of water. Upon drinking, he quickly spits it out, revolted by the taste, and in disappointment, he shouts angrily. They continue walking aimlessly, crossing areas infested with nephilim, but remain unafraid. During the night, Demian lights a campfire, and they eat the meat they manage to catch. Demian asks why they call him Bannon. He replies that it is a nickname given to him for liking comics as a child. There was a character named Brian Bannon, and his father started calling him that. Demian continues questioning who he really is. They have a deep conversation until Demian asks to see the gun, but Bannon remains silent and does not hand it over. The next day, while Bannon sleeps, a female voice leaves a message for him. During his sleep, he finds himself in a disturbing nightmare and comes across the phone that had been stolen. He looks for Demian but doesn't find him. Soon, he sees the old man performing rituals again. He also sees the little boy, a woman and another man, people who seem to be those he killed. In despair, he decides to shoot the old man. But suddenly, Demian appears and begins shooting at Bannon, who hides among the trunks and shoots back. Bannon runs while Demian continues shooting, but he loses sight of him. Afterward, he finds him crawling on the ground. Demian tears out his tooth and tries to strangle him while Bannon sees the face of the previous man. Bannon manages to break free and crawls to grab the gun, but when he turns around, Demian is already aiming the gun and shoots him. Demian takes Bannon's backpack and watches him agonizing in pain. He drinks a bottle of water in front of Bannon and explains his reasons, saying that Bannon does not belong to that world and calls him a parasite. Bannon asks who he is, and Demian only replies that he is a survivor. Bannon insists on the question, but he doesn't know the answer. And, just as he did with the others, Demian leaves him to die. Demian's phone rings. He answers and hears a female voice calling him love. He just smiles, and then everything ends with his tragic death.